President Trump wins.
What happened, Maya?
3 minutes.
I can't go on right away.
We will go back into court. We will them up.
Kerry, how did you get involved with the ACLU to begin with, and what made you want to get their story out?
Well, I've been involved with the ACLU for many years, just as an activist and advocate, and have been so grateful for their work and grateful to partner with them on different fronts throughout the years. But when it was 7 days into Trump's administration and he enacted the Muslim ban, and everyone was, in crowds and droves in Brooklyn with cheering the ACLU on for stopping that Muslim ban. And I just thought, who is on the ground with these lawyers? These lawyers are going to be the heroes who are at the forefront of the most important battles of our lifetime over the next 4 years. And who's with them to capture this moment, to capture these real life superheroes? And I found out that the creative team behind Weiner had the same thought. And so that just felt like a no-brainer, absolute magical opportunity. So we all got to work together.
The A stands for American. Americans come first. We don't appreciate your work.
You're a filthy organization. Obviously, most of you are pedophiles.
I read that initially the ACLU was like, no, you're not going to get that kind of access. Do you guys have a sense of how the ACLU kind of gave in? And then how did you guys, did you guys have to come to terms with that yourselves too? How did you decide to say yes?
So I think there was a lot of conversation among the higher ups at the ACLU as to whether to allow this or not. Obviously, there are a lot of really logistical concerns about attorney-client privilege and how we were going to navigate that and set some boundaries with the filmmakers. And I have to say that they were fantastic. Anytime we needed to say, you need to leave the room, we need to have a confidential conversation, they would. And I think, over the time that we were with them, we just built a lot of trust with them as well. And so the more that we kind of said that here are the boundaries and they respected them, that also just kind of increased the level of trust. And then we just spent a lot of time with them and really it became like a friend was with you during these really difficult moments.
6 states would lose a seat in Congress. It's all based on the census. Kind of difficult to imagine higher stakes.
In the doc, you say, Dale, that if you were kind of in this place before the last election where if Hillary had won, you might have considered going somewhere else, but you really felt like there was a lot of civil rights work to be done right now specifically. How do you feel now, 4 years later, going into the next election cycle?
Well, I was tired in 2016. I just had 2 pretty long trials out of town and spent a lot of time away from my family. I haven't spent a lot of time away from my family over the last few months, like everyone else. We've been crawling all over each other for a little while, but it's been tiring again. This election season has been busier than any election year I've ever had. We normally file maybe 3 or 4 new cases in the spring before an election. We've filed 14 since March to try to make sure that everyone can vote safely during the pandemic, because that I feel like is maybe the biggest threat that we have to voting rights right now, is that folks are going to not be able to either get to the polls or are going to be worried about COVID exposure in November. So we're just trying to make sure that no one has to choose between their health and their voting rights. And it's tiring. I'm gonna do another gut check, I think, after the election and see how I feel.
People say, why don't you go work at a law firm? Why have this level of stress riding on your shoulders? If we lose this case, I don't know what Roe versus Wade means.
There's an article on the ACLU website right now that I really like. It's called How Reproductive Justice is Part of an Anti-Racist Agenda. When we first meet you, Brigitte, you're working on an abortion rights case about a migrant detained at the border, which is really shows the sort of intersectionality of all of these issues.
Absolutely. And shout out to Renee Bracey-Sherman, the author of the piece about racial justice. So we all kind of operate a little bit in our silos in terms of the expertise of our issue areas, as you can see in the film. And obviously there's a lot of crossover. So when the Jane Doe case first came up, we were obviously in conversations with Lee and his team from the Immigrants' Rights Project about the different ways that the immigrants' rights issues would show up in our case. But the bottom line is that if you are here in the United States, regardless of your documentation or your citizenship, you have the right to access abortion, and the government can't ban you or block you from accessing abortion. And so that the actual legal right that we were fighting for is under Roe versus Wade and under that line of cases. But we were constantly talking to Lee, and I have so much admiration for my client, Jane Doe, who stood up to the Trump administration despite the fact that they had her immigration status in their hand and they could have retaliated against her. And nevertheless, she fought for not only her rights, but also then to be the head of the class action to make sure that this didn't happen to other young women.
We just keep fighting. That's what we do.
We are here right now.
If I'm not going to be a civil rights lawyer right now, in this moment, when?